A single glass. A split-second choice. A life rewritten. Tonight, in an upscale restaurant where power brokers toast to blood money, a waitress will see what no one else can: death disguised as hospitality. One wine glass, placed too perfectly, meant for a man who has survived wars, betrayals, and 20 years of enemies. But this time the threat sits at his own table. She has 3 seconds to decide: walk away and let fate take its course, or step back into the violence she spent 5 years running from. Stay until the end. Hit like. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The dining room smelled like money and lies. Alara Vance moved through the space with practiced invisibility, her black uniform blending into the shadows between tables. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across white linens. Conversations hummed, deals sealed over ribeye, secrets traded between sips of Bordeaux. She'd worked at Luminaire for 11 months now, and she'd learned the rhythm. Keep your head down. Refill without being asked. Smile just enough to be pleasant, not enough to be remembered. That was the goal, to not be remembered. She carried a tray of empty glasses toward the kitchen, her footsteps silent on carpet that probably cost more than her annual rent. Table 12 needed water. Table 9 wanted their check. Table 6... She stopped. Table 6 was different tonight. Adrian Voss sat at the head of a round table near the back corner, his broad shoulders relaxed against the leather booth. Mid-40s, graying at the temples, wearing a suit that whispered wealth without shouting it. He came here twice a month, always with the same group. 4 men who looked like executives but moved like soldiers. They spoke in low tones, laughed at inside jokes, ordered the most expensive bottles like they were buying gas station wine. Alara had served them before, had learned to read the table's hierarchy without trying. Adrian was the center, the one the others deferred to, the one who decided when dinner was over. The others were satellites, loyal, watchful, dangerous in ways the other diners would never recognize. But tonight something was off. She couldn't pinpoint it at first. The table looked normal, 5 men, 5 place settings. Appetizers had been cleared. Entrees were due out in 10 minutes. Wine glasses stood at each seat, filled with a 2015 Barolo that cost $400 a bottle. Then she saw it. The glass in front of Adrian's seat sat 2 inches farther from the edge than the others, perfectly centered on an invisible line between his plate and the flower arrangement, the stem aligned precisely with the knife beside it. Too precise. Alara's pulse kicked up. She forced herself to keep walking, to not stare, to give nothing away. Her training, the training she'd buried under 5 years of deliberate mediocrity, whispered warnings she couldn't ignore. Nobody places a glass like that by accident. She reached the kitchen doors and pushed through, letting the chaos of the back of house wash over her. Chefs shouted orders, pans clanged, steam billowed from industrial stoves. She set her tray down and gripped the edge of the steel counter, breathing carefully. "It's nothing. You're paranoid. You've been out too long." But her hands were shaking. "Alara, you good?" Marcus, one of the line cooks, glanced at her while plating salmon. "Yeah, fine." She straightened, grabbed a water pitcher, and headed back out. The thing about violence, real violence, the kind that ended lives in boardrooms and back alleys, was that it had a signature, a rhythm. She'd learned to read it the way other people read body language. During her 6 years with Sentinel Group, a private security firm that handled problems for people who couldn't call the police, she'd seen executions disguised as accidents, bombs hidden in birthday cakes, poison delivered in handshakes, and wine glasses placed just a little too perfectly. She moved through the dining room again, forcing her breathing to steady. Table 6 was laughing now. Adrian said something that made the others grin. One of them, a bald man with a scar along his jawline, refilled his own glass from the bottle. Not Adrian's glass, his own. Alara's eyes tracked the table. 5 men, 5 glasses, but only one positioned with that kind of deliberate care. She scanned the faces, tried to remember names from credit card receipts. Adrian Voss, she knew that one. The bald man was Kostya something, Russian accent, always ordered vodka as a chaser. The younger one with the slicked back hair was Marco. Twitchy hands checked his phone every 5 minutes. The man to Adrian's left was older, 60-something, silver beard trimmed to a point. And the 5th, The fifth man was new. Alara had never seen him before. Younger than the others, maybe 30, dark hair, clean-shaven, wearing a suit that fit too well for someone who wasn't important. He sat directly across from Adrian, his posture relaxed, his smile easy. He hadn't touched his wine yet. Neither had Adrian. She felt the hairs on her neck rise. Someone at this table set him up, someone he trusts. The realization hit her like cold water. This wasn't a rival crew. This wasn't some external threat. This was inside. One of these four men had positioned that glass, had made sure it would be the one Adrian reached for. And from the way the new guy kept smiling, kept drawing Adrian into conversation, she had a pretty good guess who. The kitchen doors swung open. Paul, the floor manager, stepped out with a tray of entrees. "Table 6, he called. Alara moved on instinct. "I've got it." Paul blinked. "It's not your section." "I know." Rachel slammed. "I'll take it." She didn't wait for permission, just took the tray and crossed the room, her mind racing. "You can't stop this. It's not your problem. Walk away." But her feet kept moving. Because here's the thing about being good at violence, you never really leave it behind. You just learn to recognize it faster. She reached table 6 and began setting plates down with mechanical precision. Filet mignon for Adrian. Lamb chops for Kostya. The new guy got the sea bass. She worked clockwise, her hands steady, even though her heart was trying to break through her ribs. "Thank you, sweetheart." Adrian's voice was smooth, cultured. He barely looked at her. She nodded. Set down the last plate. And then, because she was already committed, already past the point of no return, she reached for Adrian's wine glass. "Let me just—" Her hand bumped the stem. Not hard, just enough. The glass tipped, spilling Barolo across the white tablecloth in a dark, spreading stain. "Shit!" She grabbed a napkin, pressing it against the spill. "I'm so sorry. I'll get you a new one right away." Adrian leaned back, more amused than annoyed. No harm done. But the new guy's smile had frozen, just for a second, just long enough for Alara to catch it. She gathered the soaked napkins, picked up the empty glass. "I'll be right back." In the kitchen, she dumped the napkins and held the glass up to the light. Clear crystal, no residue. But when she sniffed the rim, there it was. Under the wine's tannins, something faintly bitter. Almond sweet, cyanide. Her stomach dropped. She'd just stopped an execution. In the middle of a crowded restaurant, without backup, without a plan, without even being sure until this exact moment. And now she had to finish it. Alara grabbed a fresh glass from the rack and filled it with Barolo from a different bottle. Carried it back out. Set it down in front of Adrian with a practiced smile. "Again, I'm so sorry about that." "Don't worry about it." Adrian was already back in conversation, dismissing her with a wave. But as she turned to leave, the new guy's eyes followed her, cold, calculating. "He knows." She kept walking, made it 3 steps before she heard Kostya's voice. "Hey, sweetheart, you gonna clean up the rest of this mess or what?" She turned back. The spilled wine had spread, soaking into the tablecloth, dripping onto the chair. Kostya was holding up his own glass, grinning. "Might as well grab me a fresh one while you're at it. This one got some of the spill in it." Alara's mind went blank, because Kostya's glass sat exactly where Adrian's had been. When she'd bumped the table, everything had shifted slightly, and now Kostya, loyal, scarred, probably a killer Kostya, was holding the glass that had been meant for his boss. She opened her mouth, closed it. If she said something now, people would panic. Adrian's crew would lock down the room. Questions would be asked. Her background would come up. And everything she'd built in 5 years of hiding would collapse. But if she stayed quiet, Kostya raised the glass to his lips. "Wait." The word came out before she could stop it. 5 pairs of eyes turned to her. Her brain scrambled. She needed a reason, any reason. "There's—" She pointed at the glass. "There's a crack. In the stem. I saw it when I was cleaning up. You don't want it to break on you." Kostya frowned and held the glass up, squinting at it. It was a stupid lie, transparent. But in that half-second of distraction, Alara moved. She reached for the glass like she was going to take it. Kostya's grip loosened, and then she did something she'd learned in a combat psychology course 7 years ago, something designed to bypass conscious thought and trigger reflex. She sneezed, loud, sudden, directly over the table. Everyone recoiled. Kostya jerked the glass away from his mouth. The new guy pulled back in disgust. Even Adrian shifted in his seat. Oh my God. Alara covered her face, playing up the embarrassment. I'm so sorry. I think I'm. Let me just get you all fresh glasses. Please, I'm so sorry. She didn't wait for approval. Just started gathering glasses, moving fast, creating enough confusion that nobody had time to object. She grabbed Adrian's new glass, grabbed Kostya's, grabbed the others. The new guy tried to hold on to his. Mine's fine. Sir, I sneezed directly over the table. Let me just. She tugged it gently, and he released it with a tight smile. Alara carried all 5 glasses back to the kitchen, her hand shaking so hard she almost dropped the tray. In the safety of the back-of-house chaos, she stared at the glass that had been in front of Kostya, the one Adrian was supposed to drink from. Someone had planned this perfectly, timed it to the minute, positioned everything just right, and she'd just thrown a wrench into a machine designed to kill, which meant someone was about to get very, very angry. She dumped 4 of the glasses into the wash bin. The 5th, the poisoned one, she wrapped carefully in a bar towel and tucked into her apron. Evidence. Insurance. She wasn't sure yet. When she brought fresh glasses back to table 6, the mood had shifted. The laughter was gone. Adrian was watching her now, really watching her, his eyes sharp in a way they hadn't been before. You're new, he said. Not a question. About a year, sir. What's your name? Her pulse hammered. Alara. Alara. He tested the word. You seem nervous, Alara. I'm mortified, sir. The spill, the sneeze, I promise that's not normal for me. I'm sure, but his tone said he wasn't sure at all. The new guy leaned forward. Maybe she's just not feeling well. Bad night to be serving tables, huh? It was a threat wrapped in concern. Alara felt it like a knife pressed to her ribs. I'm fine. She set down the last glass. Can I get you gentlemen anything else? No. Adrian's voice cut through the tension. We're good. She nodded and walked away, feeling eyes on her back the entire way. The rest of the dinner service passed in a blur. She moved through her section on autopilot, refilling water, delivering desserts, printing checks. But her attention never left table 6. Adrian's crew finished their meal, paid in cash, left a 30% tip, and through it all, Alara waited for the moment when someone would collapse, when the poison would hit, when her intervention would either save a life or condemn an innocent man. It came 20 minutes after they'd finished their entrees. Kostya stood to use the restroom, made it 3 steps from the table before his legs buckled. He went down hard, crashing into a neighboring table. Glass shattered. A woman screamed, and then Kostya started convulsing. The restaurant erupted. Diners jumped from their seats. Waitstaff rushed forward. Someone shouted for a doctor. Adrian's men surrounded Kostya's thrashing body, blocking him from view, their training kicking in even as panic spread. Alara stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, the bar towel with the poisoned glass still tucked in her apron. She'd switched the glasses. She'd stopped Adrian from drinking, but she'd also just killed a man. No, she'd just revealed who the killer tried to kill. Adrian rose from his seat slowly, his face a mask of controlled fury. He scanned the room, eyes moving from face to face, table to table. And then he looked directly at Alara. In that moment, she saw the calculation happen behind his eyes, the pieces clicking into place, the spilled wine, the sneeze, the switched glasses. He knew. She'd saved his life, and in doing so, she'd signed her own death warrant. Because men like Adrian Voss didn't let debts go unpaid. And they sure as hell didn't let witnesses walk away. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Alara pulled off her apron and walked toward the back exit, her hands surprisingly steady now. She'd made her choice. Stepped back into the world she'd tried to leave behind. And there was no walking away from it now. Behind her, Kostya stopped convulsing. The restaurant fell into awful silence, and Alara Vance disappeared into the night, carrying a poisoned wine glass and the knowledge that she'd just become the most dangerous person in the room. Not because of what she'd done, but because of what she knew how to do. And somewhere in that crowded restaurant, a killer was realizing they'd failed, that their carefully laid plan had been dismantled by a waitress who shouldn't have noticed, who shouldn't have cared, who shouldn't have been capable of stopping them, but was. The game had changed, and Alara was already 10 moves ahead, even if she didn't want to be, because that was the thing about instinct. about training burned so deep it became reflex. You could bury it, ignore it, pretend it didn't exist. But when the moment came, when death walked into your section wearing a smile and carrying a wine bottle, you either acted or you watched people die. Alara had acted, and now she'd have to live with what came next. The alley behind Luminaire smelled like garbage and rain that hadn't fallen yet. Alara hit the back door at full speed, the metal bar clanging as she shoved through into the narrow space between buildings. Her breath came sharp and fast, but her legs were steady. Muscle memory from a life she'd tried to forget. She didn't run. Running drew attention. Instead, she walked quickly toward the street, pulling her hair out of its tight bun, letting it fall around her shoulders. Changed her silhouette, made her look less like a fleeing waitress and more like someone heading home after a late shift. The poisoned glass pressed against her ribs through the bar towel, a reminder that she was carrying evidence of attempted murder. Smart move would be to ditch it, smash it in a dumpster, and disappear. But Alara hadn't survived 6 years at Sentinel Group by making the smart move every time. Sometimes you kept the leverage. She reached the sidewalk and merged into the foot traffic. The city was alive at 11 p.m., couples stumbling out of bars, tourists studying their phones, delivery guys on bikes weaving through cars. She pulled out her own phone and called the one person she'd kept in her contacts from the old days. 3 rings. Then a familiar voice, wary and sharp. "This number's been dead for 5 years." "Hey, Iris." Alara kept walking, eyes scanning the street behind her. "I need a favor." A long pause. "You've got some nerve." "I've got a problem." "Not my problem." "It will be if Adrian Voss decides I'm worth hunting." The silence that followed was different, calculating. Iris Chen had been Alara's handler at Sentinel Group, the person who'd assigned jobs, managed logistics, cleaned up the messes. When Alara had walked away from the firm, she'd burned every bridge except one. Iris had let her disappear without asking questions. That debt was the only currency Alara had left. "Where are you?" Iris finally asked. "Downtown, near 12th and Morrison. There's a parking garage 2 blocks west, 3rd level, southeast corner, 20 minutes. The line went dead. Alara pocketed her phone and changed direction, cutting through a late-night drugstore to check if anyone was following. The fluorescent lights made everything look sick and overexposed. She grabbed a bottle of water and paid cash, using the reflection in the security mirror to scan the entrance. No one came in behind her. She left through a side door and made her way to the parking garage, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. The stairwell echoed with her footsteps, concrete and metal amplifying every sound. By the time she reached the 3rd level, her hands had stopped shaking. That bothered her more than the shaking had. "You're slipping back into the old patterns, the old reflexes." A black SUV sat in the southeast corner, engine running. Alara approached from an angle that kept her out of the driver's blind spot until the last second. The passenger window rolled down. "Get in." Iris looked exactly the same, mid-40s, Korean-American, haircut in a severe bob that made her look like she ran a Fortune 500 company instead of a private security firm that operated in the spaces between legal and catastrophic. She wore a charcoal blazer and an expression that said she was already regretting this. Alara climbed into the passenger seat. "You look like hell," Iris said. "Thanks. What did you do?" "Stopped an assassination." Iris's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Of course you did. It was Adrian Voss." "Oh, for fuck's sake." Iris put the SUV in gear and pulled out of the parking spot, heading toward the exit ramp. "You stopped a hit on Adrian Voss. Do you have any idea how many people want that man dead?" "One of them was at his table, someone he trusts." "And you just... what? Knocked the poison out of his hand? Performed an impromptu Heimlich?" "Switched the glasses. His bodyguard drank it instead." Iris was quiet for 3 blocks. Then she laughed, short and bitter. "You saved a crime boss and killed his muscle. That's extremely on brand for you, Alara." "I didn't kill anyone. The person who poisoned the glass killed him." "Yeah, I'm sure Voss sees it that way." Iris turned onto a service road that ran parallel to the waterfront. Empty warehouses loomed on either side. "What do you want from me?" "Information. Who wants Voss dead?" Shorter list would be who doesn't. Someone who could get close, someone at his table. Iris pulled into an abandoned lot and killed the engine. She turned to face Alara, her expression unreadable. You walked away. You were out. Why the hell would you step back into this? I didn't mean to. Bullshit. You saw something and you acted. That's what you do. That's what you've always done. Iris pulled out her phone and started typing. The problem is, you're good at it, which means Voss is going to figure out exactly what you are. He already has. Then you're already dead. The words hung in the air between them. Alara pulled the wrapped glass from her jacket and set it on the console. This is the glass. Still has residue. I'm guessing cyanide, but I'm not a chemist. Iris stared at it like it was a live grenade. You kept it. Leverage. It's evidence that you were involved. It's evidence that someone tried to kill Voss and that I stopped it. Alara met Iris's eyes. I need you to find out who the new guy was. Early 30s, dark hair, expensive suit, sat across from Voss, kept him talking while the poison was supposed to work. You think he's the one who set it up? He's the only person at that table who wasn't drinking, and when I spilled the wine, he looked at me like I'd just cost him $1 million. Iris picked up the glass carefully, turning it in the light. I'll run it through the lab, but if Voss's people come looking for you, they won't find me. Don't be stupid. You know how this works. He'll dig into your background. He'll find Sentinel Group. He'll find me, and then he'll find you. Then I need to move first. Move first? Iris's voice went flat. Against Adrian Voss? Alara, the man runs half the organized crime in this city. He has cops on payroll, judges in his pocket, and enough muscle to start a small war. You're a waitress with a hero complex. I'm a waitress who just saved his life. That's worth something. Or it makes you a liability he needs to eliminate. Alara opened the door. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Wait, Iris grabbed her arm. If you're serious about this, if you're really going to walk back into that world, you need to understand something. Voss isn't like the corporate targets we handled at Sentinel. He doesn't play by rules, he doesn't negotiate. If he decides you're a threat, you won't see it coming. Then I'll make sure he doesn't decide that. How? Alara stepped out of the SUV. By being useful. She walked back toward the main road, leaving Iris in the parking lot with a poisoned wine glass and probably a dozen reasons to regret answering the phone. The rain started as she hit the sidewalk, cold and sudden, turning the streetlights into blurred halos. Alara pulled up her collar and kept walking, no destination in mind, just movement to keep the thoughts at bay. She'd saved a man's life tonight. That should feel good. Should feel righteous. Instead, it felt like she'd just opened a door she'd spent 5 years keeping locked. Her apartment was a studio in a converted warehouse near the industrial district. Cheap rent, thin walls, neighbors who didn't ask questions. She'd chosen it specifically because it was forgettable, the kind of place you could disappear into. Alara climbed the 3 flights of stairs and unlocked the door, half expecting to find someone waiting inside. The apartment was empty. She locked the door behind her, engaged the deadbolt, and dragged a chair under the handle. Old habits. Then she stripped out of her wet clothes and stood under a hot shower until her skin turned red. By the time she got out, it was past midnight. She pulled on sweatpants and a t-shirt and sat on the edge of her bed staring at her phone. No missed calls, no messages. The silence felt wrong. She pulled up a news site and searched for Luminaire, found a breaking story posted 20 minutes ago. Medical emergency at upscale restaurant. 1 man hospitalized after collapsing during dinner service. Authorities investigating possible food poisoning. Restaurant closed pending health inspection. Food poisoning. Right. Alara refreshed the page. A new update appeared. Update. Man pronounced dead at Mercy General. Identity not yet released. Police now treating incident as suspicious death. She set the phone down and pressed her palms against her eyes. Kostya. That was his name. Kostya with the scar and the Russian accent, who probably had a family, who died because she'd made a choice in 3 seconds without knowing all the variables. You saved Voss. That was the job. You did the job. Except it wasn't a job. She didn't work for Sentinel anymore. She wasn't supposed to be making those calls. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Alara stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Alara Vance? The voice was male, calm, with an edge of authority that said he was used to being obeyed. Who's asking? Someone who wants to say thank you. Her blood went cold. I think you have the wrong number. I don't think I do. You switched the glasses. At table 6, very smooth, very professional. She hung up. The phone rang again immediately. This time she didn't answer, just powered it off and pulled the battery. Another old habit. Then she grabbed her go-bag from the closet, packed 5 years ago and never touched, and started loading essentials. Cash. Fake ID. Burner phones. A Glock 19 she'd told herself she'd never need again. She was zipping the bag closed when someone knocked on her door. 3 sharp raps. Deliberate. Alara froze. Miss Vance? A different voice. Younger. We're not here to hurt you. Mr. Voss just wants to talk. She didn't respond. Just grabbed the Glock and moved to the window, checking the fire escape. 2 men stood on the metal platform. Suits, earpieces, hands resting near their waistbands. There's no way out, the voice at the door continued. We've been watching your building since you got home. Mr. Voss is downstairs in his car. He'd consider it a personal favor if you'd join him for a conversation. 5 minutes. That's all he's asking. Alara looked at the gun in her hand, looked at the door, looked at the window. You could fight. You'd lose, but you could try. Or you could find out what he wants. She set the gun down and opened the door. 3 men stood in the hallway. The one who'd been speaking was mid-20s, blonde, with the kind of baby face that made you underestimate him. The other 2 were older, harder, with the stillness of people who'd killed before and would do it again without losing sleep. I'm not armed, Alara said. Babyface smiled. We know. We've been listening. Of course they had. They escorted her downstairs, 1 in front, 2 behind, professional spacing. No touching unless necessary. When they reached the street, a black Mercedes waited at the curb, engine running. The rear door opened. Adrian Voss sat in the back seat, looking relaxed in a way that felt deliberate, like he wanted her to know he wasn't threatened, that this was his city, his rules, his game. Get in, he said. Alara slid into the seat beside him. Babyface closed the door and the Mercedes pulled into traffic. You have a very interesting background, Miss Vance. Adrian's voice was the same smooth baritone from the restaurant. Up close, she could see the details. The scar above his left eyebrow, the slight crook in his nose from an old break, the wedding ring he still wore even though she'd read somewhere that his wife had died years ago. Sentinel Group, 6 years, specialized in counter-surveillance and threat assessment. Exemplary record. Then you just disappeared. I retired. People in our line of work don't retire. They get killed or they get smart. He turned to look at her directly. Which one are you? I got tired. Of what? Cleaning up other people's messes. Adrian smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. And yet tonight, you cleaned up mine. I stopped someone from dying. That's different. Is it? He leaned back, studying her. You saw the glass. You recognized the setup. You acted without hesitation. That's not a civilian response, Miss Vance. That's training. Alara said nothing. Kostya's been with me for 12 years, Adrian continued. Loyal, ruthless when necessary. Good father, surprisingly. 3 daughters. He was teaching the oldest one to drive. His tone didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. You got him killed. No, whoever poisoned that glass got him killed. Semantics. Facts. They drove in silence for a block. Then Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. Slid it across the seat. It was the new guy from the restaurant. Clear shot. Professional quality. His name is Daniel Cross, Adrian said. Works for the Kincaid family. They've been trying to move into my territory for 18 months. Bribes, intimidation, the usual dance, but this, he tapped the photo. This was elegant. Get inside my circle. Earn my trust. Take me out at dinner where everyone sees but nobody understands. Make it look natural. He looked at Alara. If you hadn't intervened, it would have worked. So what do you want from me? Information. How did you know? The glass was placed wrong. Wrong how? Too perfect. Nobody sets a glass down with that kind of precision unless they're making a point. And the only point that makes sense in this context is drink from this one specifically. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, genuine surprise. You saw that. in the middle of a dinner rush, while carrying plates. I notice things? Clearly. He took the photo back. Daniel Cross is in the wind, disappeared the moment Kostya hit the floor. The Kincaids will deny everything, of course. They'll say he was a rogue operative, that they had no knowledge of his plans, and without proof, you can't move against them without starting a war. Exactly. The Mercedes turned onto a quieter street. Trees lined the sidewalk, their branches skeletal in the streetlights. So here's my problem, Adrian said. I have a dead friend, a killer who got away, and a waitress who knows too much. He turned to face her. Tell me, Miss Vance, why should I let you walk away from this? Alara met his eyes. Because I'm not the one who tried to kill you. And because if you hurt me, Iris Chen will make it her personal mission to burn down everything you've built. Iris Chen, Adrian smiled. Your old handler. I wondered how you'd disappear so completely. Sentinel Group covers its tracks well. She's got files on everyone. Insurance policy. If something happens to me, those files go to every federal agency you've ever bribed. It was a bluff. Probably. Alara wasn't actually sure what Iris had or didn't have, but it sounded good. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Fair enough. So let's talk about what happens next. I go home. You forget I exist. Everyone wins. Or, Adrian said, you work for me. Alara blinked. What? You spotted an inside job that my own security missed. You acted without backup, without authorization, without any guarantee that you'd live through it. That's exactly the kind of person I need. I'm not a bodyguard. I don't need a bodyguard. I need someone who sees what others miss. Someone who understands how people think, how they move, how they kill. He leaned forward. The Kincaids will try again. Different method, different angle. And next time Daniel Cross won't be sloppy enough to place a glass wrong. I need someone who can catch the things I don't see coming. Find someone else. There is no one else. Not with your skill set, not with your instincts. His voice dropped. And not with your debt. What debt? You got Kostya killed. His daughters don't have a father now. His wife doesn't have a husband. That's on you. Alara's jaw tightened. That's on whoever poisoned the glass. Tell that to his family. The words hit like a punch. Because he was right. She could rationalize it all she wanted. She'd saved Adrian. She'd done the right thing. She couldn't have known. But the fact remained. A man was dead because of her choices. One job, Adrian said. You help me find Daniel Cross and the people who sent him. You help me prove the Kincaids ordered the hit. And then you walk away clean, debt paid. And if I say no, then I make a phone call. And by sunrise, everyone in this city knows that Alara Vance, formerly of Sentinel Group, is back in play. The Kincaids will want you dead for ruining their plan. My enemies will see you as leverage, and every 2-bit crew looking to make a name will think you're an easy target. He smiled. You wanted to disappear, Miss Vance. I'm offering you the chance to stay disappeared after you help me. The Mercedes pulled to a stop in front of her building. Alara looked out at the familiar brick facade, the dim streetlights, the life she'd built out of deliberate mediocrity. She could say no, could walk away, could run. But Adrian was right about one thing. She was already back in. The moment she'd switched those glasses, she'd stepped off the sidelines. One job, she said quietly. One job. And you leave Iris out of it. Whatever happens, she stays clean. Adrian extended his hand. Deal. Alara shook it, sealing a bargain she knew she'd regret. She climbed out of the Mercedes and watched it drive away, taillights fading into the city night. Behind her, the apartment building waited. Her old life, already feeling like something from a different person's memory. She walked inside, climbed the stairs, and sat on her bed with the lights off. One job. Find Daniel Cross. Prove the Kincaids sent him. Walk away clean. Simple. Except nothing was ever simple. Not in this world. Her phone, the one she'd powered off earlier, sat on the nightstand. She turned it back on. 3 missed calls. All from the same unknown number, and one text message. You made the right choice. We'll be in touch. AV. Alara deleted the message and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in the city, Daniel Cross was running. The Kincaids were regrouping, and Adrian Voss was planning his next move. And she was right back where she'd started 6 years ago, hunting people who didn't want to be found, playing games where the stakes were measured in bodies. She closed her eyes and tried to remember why she'd left in the first place, but all she could see was Kostya collapsing, his body hitting the floor, the chaos that followed. One job. That's what they all said. And it never ever stopped at one. Sleep didn't come. Alara lay in the dark, listening to the building settle around her, pipes groaning, footsteps overhead, someone's TV bleeding through the walls. Every sound felt amplified, significant, like the world was closing in. At 4 a.m., she gave up and made coffee. Sat at her tiny kitchen table with her laptop open, doing what she should have done 5 years ago when she left Sentinel Group. She started building a profile on Daniel Cross. The internet gave her the basics. LinkedIn said he was a financial consultant for Meridian Holdings, bachelor's from Princeton, MBA from Wharton. Clean photo, professional smile, recommendations from people whose names meant money. Nothing that screamed hired killer. But Alara knew how this worked. The best operators didn't look dangerous. They looked trustworthy, like someone you'd do business with. She cross-referenced Meridian Holdings with known Kincaid family assets, found 3 shell companies, 2 offshore accounts, and a paper trail that led exactly nowhere useful. The Kincaids were careful. Old money, old power. They'd been running this city's underworld since Prohibition, always one step removed from the dirt. Adrian was new money in comparison. 20 years of building an empire through violence and strategy. The 2 families had been circling each other for decades, but open war would cost everyone too much. So they played chess instead. And Daniel Cross had been a very expensive pawn. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. Cars outside your building at 8 a.m. Be ready. Business casual. AV. Alara stared at the message. Business casual, like this was a job interview instead of a hunt for an assassin. She showered, dressed in black pants and a gray blouse that could pass for professional. Strapped a knife to her ankle out of habit, left the Glock in the go bag. Walking around armed would send the wrong message to Adrian's people, and she needed them to see her as an asset, not a threat. At 7:45, she grabbed coffee from the shop on the corner. The owner, Mrs. Kim, gave her the usual nod. No conversation. That was the deal in this neighborhood. You didn't ask questions. Alara stood on the sidewalk, sipping burnt coffee and watching traffic. At exactly 8 a.m., a black Escalade pulled up. Babyface from last night stepped out. Morning, Miss Vance. It's just Alara. Mark. He opened the rear door. Mr. Voss is waiting. The drive took 20 minutes, heading toward the financial district. They pulled into an underground garage beneath a glass tower that probably cost more than Alara would make in 10 lifetimes. Mark led her to a private elevator that required a key card. They rode up in silence. The doors opened on the 42nd floor. Not an office, an apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that looked like art installations. Everything white and chrome and expensive. Adrian stood by the windows, phone to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. He glanced at Alara and held up one finger. Wait. She waited. The apartment was too clean. No personal touches. No photos. No books. Nothing that said someone actually lived here. It felt like a showroom. A place to meet people, not a place to exist. Adrian ended the call and pocketed his phone. Coffee? I'm good. Suit yourself. He poured himself a cup from a machine that probably cost more than her car. Did you sleep? No? Good. Neither did I. He gestured toward a leather couch. Sit. We need to talk strategy. Alara sat. Adrian remained standing, pacing slowly, organizing his thoughts. The Kincaids have 4 primary operations in this city, he began. Real estate development, import-export through the harbor, a chain of luxury hotels, and a private equity firm that's mostly legitimate. They use the legitimate businesses to wash money from the illegitimate ones. Standard operation. Where does Daniel Cross fit? He worked for the equity firm, low-level analyst. At least that's what the paperwork says. But 3 months ago, he started showing up at industry events, making connections. Got himself invited to a charity fundraiser where I happened to be speaking. We talked for maybe 5 minutes, nothing memorable, but he followed up. Sent me an investment proposal. Good one, smart projections. I had my people vet him. Everything checked out. Because the Kincaids made sure it would. Exactly. They spent months building his cover, probably longer. This wasn't a rushed job. Adrian set his coffee down. 2 weeks ago, he reached out again. Said he had information about a competitor trying to undercut one of my shipping contracts. The information was good, useful. So when he asked to meet for dinner to discuss a potential partnership, I said yes, and brought him into your inner circle. I brought him to dinner. That's not the same thing. Adrian's jaw tightened. But I was sloppy. I should have vetted him harder, should have kept him at arm's length. Instead, I let him sit at my table. Ilara heard the anger beneath the words, not at her, at himself. Kostya drank from your glass, she said quietly. That means Cross positioned it after you sat down, which means he had access to the table before service started. He arrived early, said he wanted to review some documents before the others got there. I was running late, so I told the restaurant to seat him. Adrian's expression darkened. He had 10 minutes alone at that table, more than enough time. Where's the cyanide now? The glass I gave Iris? Being analyzed, but we already know what it'll show. The question isn't what killed Kostya, it's how we prove the Kincaids ordered it. Ilara stood and walked to the windows. 42 floors below, the city sprawled in every direction. Tiny cars, tiny people, lives unfolding in ignorance of the violence happening just above their heads. Daniel Cross is trained, she said. The way he handled himself at dinner, the precision of the setup, that's not amateur work, which means he's done this before. Agreed. So we find his previous jobs, build a pattern, link them back to Kincaid interests. That's a long game, could take months. You have a better idea? Adrian joined her at the window. We find Cross, make him talk. He's already gone, could be anywhere by now. He's still in the city. Ilara turned to look at him. How do you know? Because the Kincaids wouldn't let him leave. He failed. That makes him a liability. They'll want to debrief him, find out what went wrong, decide whether he's worth keeping or worth burying. Adrian's voice was cold. They're holding him somewhere, a safe house, somewhere they control. You know where? I have ideas. The Kincaids own a lot of property, but we can narrow it down. He pulled out his phone and opened a map. There are 3 locations that make sense. A penthouse in the Riverview district, a warehouse near the docks, and an estate outside the city limits, all owned through shell companies, all with minimal security on paper, and maximum security in reality. Exactly. Ilara studied the map. The penthouse is too public, too many witnesses. The estate is too far. If something goes wrong, they're trapped. My bet's the warehouse. That's what I thought. Adrian zoomed in on the location. It's registered as a storage facility for hotel supplies. But the Kincaids use it for other things, meetings that need to stay off the books, transactions that can't happen in daylight. How good is your intelligence on it? Decent. 2 entry points. Front door and a loading dock in the back. Security cameras on all approaches, usually 3 or 4 guards on site. But if they're holding Cross, they'll have doubled that. So we're looking at 6 to 8 trained operatives, plus Cross himself if he's armed, and whoever the Kincaids sent to babysit the operation. Adrian smiled. You're already thinking tactically. Old habits. Ilara moved away from the window. If we hit the warehouse, we need a team. Just the 2 of us won't cut it. I have people. People you trust? After what happened with Cross? The question landed hard. Adrian's expression shifted, something darker moving behind his eyes. I trust Mark, he said finally, and 2 others. That's it. Everyone else is suspect until proven otherwise. 4 people to hit a defended position. That's thin. You have a better option? Ilara thought about it, ran through scenarios. We don't hit it. We make them bring Cross to us. How? The Kincaids think you're dead. Or at least they should. Kostya collapsed at your table. As far as they know, their plan worked, which means they're waiting for confirmation, waiting to see if you die in a hospital bed or make a public appearance. Adrian caught on immediately. We let them think I'm dying. Leak information that I'm at Mercy General, critical condition, not expected to survive. The Kincaids will want to verify. They'll send someone. And when they do, we follow them back to Cross. It could work. Adrian pulled out his phone again, already typing. I have a doctor on payroll at Mercy. He can create the right paperwork, leak it to the right people. How long until the Kincaids hear about it? 2 hours? Maybe 3. He looked up from his phone. You should get some rest. Once this starts, we won't stop until it's done. I don't need rest. I need information. Everything you have on the Kincaid family. Their operations, their key players, their safe houses. If we're going to do this, I need to know who we're dealing with. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he walked to a bookshelf and pressed a hidden panel. A section of the wall slid back, revealing a small office space. Monitors, filing cabinets, a computer setup that looked like it belonged in a government facility. Everything I have is in here, he said. Help yourself. Alara stepped into the hidden room. It smelled like paper and electronics. The monitors showed security feeds, the building lobby, the garage, multiple angles of the street outside. You live here? She asked. Sometimes, when I need to think. Adrian leaned against the doorframe. My real home is across town. This is just a place to work. Safe room? Something like that. Alara sat at the desk and started opening files. Financial records, surveillance photos, transcripts of phone calls. Adrian had been building a case against the Kincaids for years. Why haven't you moved against them before? She asked. Because I'm not stupid. The Kincaids have been in this city for a century. They have connections I'll never have. Old money, old power. If I go to war with them openly, I lose. He paused. But if I can prove they tried to kill me, prove it in a way that holds up to scrutiny, then I can move against them without starting a full-scale conflict. Other families will see it as justified retaliation. The balance holds. That's what this is about. Balance. It's always about balance. Alara opened a file labeled Daniel Cross. Inside were surveillance photos dating back 6 months. Cross at business meetings. Cross at the gym. Cross having dinner with a woman who looked like a model. You were watching him, she said. I watch everyone. Adrian's voice was flat. I just didn't watch him carefully enough. She clicked through more photos, paused on one that showed Cross entering a building she recognized, the Kincaid family's main office. This was taken 3 weeks ago. I know. And you still brought him to dinner? I thought he was playing both sides, trying to position himself for a better deal. People do it all the time in this business. You gather information, you leverage relationships, you wait for the right moment to make your move. Adrian's voice tightened. I didn't realize he was the move. Alara understood. She'd made similar mistakes at Sentinel, trusted the wrong person, read a situation wrong. The difference was, her mistakes usually ended with a blown operation. Adrian's ended with bodies. She spent the next 2 hours going through files, learning the Kincaid family tree. Marcus Kincaid, the patriarch, 80 years old and supposedly retired. His son, Thomas, who ran the day-to-day operations. Thomas's daughter, Claire, who handled the legitimate businesses. And a dozen cousins, nephews, and associates who formed the inner circle. Daniel Cross wasn't in the family. He was a tool. Expensive, well-trained, but ultimately disposable, which meant the Kincaids wouldn't hesitate to kill him if he became a problem. We need to move fast, Alara said. If they think Cross failed, they might eliminate him before we get there. Agreed. Adrian checked his phone. The leak's out. Mercy General is reporting Adrian Voss in critical condition, suspected poisoning, family being notified. It's all over the news. Alara pulled up a news site on the computer. Sure enough, the headline screamed, Crime Boss Fighting for Life After Restaurant Poisoning. How long until the Kincaids send someone to verify? They're probably already on their way. Adrian gestured to one of the monitors. Mark's at the hospital. He'll spot anyone who comes looking. They waited. Time stretched. Alara made more coffee. Adrian took a call in Italian, then another in English, business continuing even in the middle of a crisis. At 11:30, Mark's voice crackled through a speaker on the desk. We've got movement. 2 men in suits just asked at the information desk about Adrian Voss. Flashed credentials that look federal, but aren't. They're heading to the ICU now. Stay on them, Adrian said. Don't let them see you. Copy that. Adrian turned to Alara. This is it. If they verify I'm not here, they'll report back. We follow whoever they report to. They might just use a phone. They won't. The Kincaids are old school, no electronic trails. They'll report in person. 20 minutes later, Mark's voice came through again. They're leaving, looked frustrated. One of them made a call from the parking lot, but it was quick. Now they're getting into a black Lexus heading east on 7th. Follow them. Stay back. I want to know where they go. Alara watched the monitors, even though they showed nothing useful now. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Adrian paced, checked his phone, paced some more. You're nervous, Alara said. Kostya's funeral is tomorrow. I have to face his wife, his daughters, and tell them what? That he died because someone wanted me dead? That he took a bullet or a glass meant for me? You tell them he was loyal, that he saved your life. He didn't save my life. You did. The words hung between them. Does his family know that? Alara asked. No, and they won't. As far as they're concerned, Kostya died protecting me. He gets a hero's burial. His wife gets a pension. His daughters get college funds. That's what they need to hear. It was a kindness, Alara realized, a lie that served a purpose. She understood that, had told similar lies herself when the truth was too complicated or too cruel. Mark's voice interrupted. They just pulled into a parking structure downtown, 3rd and Madison. I'm holding position. That's 2 blocks from Kincaid headquarters, Adrian said. He pulled up a map on his phone. There's an entrance to their building through that garage. Underground tunnel. They use it to move things discreetly. So they're reporting directly to Thomas Kincaid. Looks like it. Alara stood. Then we need eyes inside that building. Can't be done. Kincaid's security is airtight. Cameras, guards, biometric locks. You can't get in without authorization. I'm not talking about breaking in. I'm talking about already being there. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Explain. But the Kincaids own luxury hotels, right? High-end places with wealthy clients? 4 properties in the city. And those properties need staff, cleaners, maintenance, concierge, people who move through the building invisible. Understanding dawned on Adrian's face. You want to pose as staff. The Kincaid headquarters is in the same building as their flagship hotel, the Regent. I looked it up while I was going through your files. Corporate offices occupy floors 20 through 30. Hotel occupies everything below, which means there's staff overlap, people who clean both areas. You're talking about infiltration. That takes time to set up, background checks, documentation. I have documentation. Sentinel Group gave me 3 full identities when I left. Clean backgrounds, references, the works. One of them is a hospitality worker. Adrian smiled slowly. You've been planning an exit strategy all along. I've been planning to stay invisible, but if you can get me hired at the Regent today, I can be inside their headquarters by tonight. Listen to what they're saying. Find out where they're holding cross. That's a hell of a risk. If they recognize you from the restaurant, they won't. I was just a waitress, background noise, and I'm good at being invisible. Adrian considered it. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Robert, it's Adrian. I need a favor. You still manage the Regent? Good. I need you to hire someone. Today. Housekeeping or room service, doesn't matter. Names? He looked at Alara. Sarah Mitchell, she said. Sarah Mitchell. She'll have all the right paperwork. Don't ask questions, just get her on the schedule for tonight. Yes, I'm aware it's irregular. That's why I'm calling you. Thank you. He hung up. You start at 6 p.m., night shift. They'll give you a uniform and a passkey. Alara checked her watch. 4 hours. I need to go home, get the documentation, change clothes. Mark will drive you. I can take the bus. Mark will drive you, and he'll wait outside your building until you're ready. We're past the point of pretending this is normal. Adrian walked her to the elevator. Be careful in there. The Kincaids are dangerous, and if they even suspect you're not who you say you are. I know how this works. The elevator doors opened. Alara stepped inside. One more thing, Adrian said. When you find out where Cross is, don't try to extract him yourself. Call me. We do this together or not at all. Understood. The doors closed. On the ride down, Alara felt the familiar weight settling over her, the mental shift from civilian to operative. She'd sworn she was done with this, done with the lies, the risks, the constant calculation of who to trust and who to kill. But here she was, 42 floors above the city, dropping back into a world where every word was a weapon and every smile hit a blade. Mark drove her home in silence. She went upstairs, retrieved the Sarah Mitchell documents from a hidden compartment in her closet. Driver's license, social security card, employment history. A whole life built on paper. She changed into jeans and a plain black shirt, tied her hair back, looked in the mirror and saw Sarah Mitchell looking back. Quiet, competent, forgettable, perfect. At 5:45, Mark drove her to the Regent, a gleaming tower of glass and marble in the heart of downtown. Doormen in uniforms, valets parking Maseratis, the kind of place where money whispered instead of shouted. Alara went in through the employee entrance. A tired-looking woman in her 50s handed her a uniform and a name tag. "You're the one Robert called about?" "Yes, ma'am." "Night shift's short-staffed, so you'll be pulling double duty. Housekeeping on floors 15 through 19, then room service if we need you. Think you can handle that?" "Absolutely." "Good. Locker room's down the hall. Get changed and report to Carlos. He's the floor supervisor." Alara changed in a bathroom stall, pinning the name tag to her uniform. Sarah Mitchell, housekeeping. She found Carlos on the 15th floor. Young guy, maybe 25, with the harried look of someone managing too many people with too few resources. "You're the new girl?" "Yes." "Great. Here's your cart. Supplies are stocked. You've got rooms 1501 through 1520. Strip the beds, replace towels, vacuum, standard turn down. Any issues, radio me. Questions? No. Then get to work." Alara pushed the cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking slightly. She'd done worse covers. At least this one came with a plausible reason to be in the building. She cleaned 3 rooms with mechanical efficiency, made beds, scrubbed toilets, the kind of work that faded into the background of guests' awareness. On the 4th room, she noticed something. The Regent's floor plan showed corporate offices starting at floor 20, but there was a service elevator at the end of this hallway that went higher than 19. She finished the room and pushed her cart to the elevator, swiped her passkey. Access denied. So the corporate floors required different authorization, which meant she'd need to find another way up. Alara returned to her cart and kept cleaning, filing the information away. By 8 p.m., she'd finished her assigned rooms. Carlos radioed her. "Mitchell, you available for room service delivery?" "Sure." "Great. Kitchen has an order for floor 26. Grab it and take it up." Floor 26, corporate level. Alara felt her pulse quicken. No problem. She took the service elevator down to the kitchen. A chef handed her a covered tray. "Where's this going?" she asked. "Room 2604, conference room. They're working late." She took the tray and rode the service elevator up. This time, the passkey worked. The elevator opened onto a carpeted hallway, much quieter than the hotel floors. Offices lined both sides. Most were dark, but light spilled from an open door halfway down the hall. Alara carried the tray toward it, her footsteps silent on thick carpet. Voices drifted out, male, tense. "Don't care what the excuse is. Voss is alive. That means Cross failed. We don't know that for certain. The hospital's a dead end. Our people confirmed. Voss isn't there. Which means he's somewhere else, healthy, and very, very angry." Alara stopped just outside the door, set the tray on a side table, pulled out her phone, and started recording. "What do we do about Cross?" A younger voice, nervous. "We cut him loose. He's a liability now. If Voss's people find him, they won't. He's secure." "Where?" "The warehouse, Eastern Docks. But I'm moving him tonight. Somewhere Voss will never think to look." Alara's breath caught. The warehouse. Adrian had been right. She picked up the tray and knocked on the door. The conversation stopped immediately. "Come in." She entered. 3 men in expensive suits sat around a conference table covered in papers. She recognized one of them from Adrian's files. Thomas Kincaid. Mid-50s, silver hair, the kind of face that sold confidence. "Room service," Alara said quietly. "Just set it down." Thomas barely looked at her. She placed the tray on the sideboard and turned to leave. "Wait." Thomas's voice stopped her. "Have we met before?" Alara's stomach dropped. but her face stayed neutral. "I don't think so, sir." "You look familiar." "I have one of those faces." She smiled blandly. "Will there be anything else?" Thomas studied her for another second, then shook his head. "No, you can go." She left, walked calmly to the elevator, pressed the button. The doors opened. She stepped inside, and only when the doors closed did she let out the breath she'd been holding. She had it, the warehouse location, confirmation that Cross was there. She pulled out her phone and texted Adrian. "Found him. Eastern Docks warehouse. They're moving him tonight." The response came immediately. "Get out! Now! Meet at the garage where Mark dropped you off." Alara finished her shift, turned in her uniform, walked out of the Regent like she'd done it 1,000 times. Mark was waiting. He drove her back to Adrian's building in silence. Adrian met her in the garage, already dressed for combat. Black tactical gear, no pretense anymore. "You're sure?" he asked. "I heard Thomas Kincaid say it himself. Cross is at the warehouse. They're moving him tonight." "Then we move first." Adrian pulled out his phone. "Mark, get the team. We hit the warehouse in 1 hour." Alara felt the familiar cold certainty settling over her, the place where fear lived but didn't interfere. This was it. The moment everything shifted from planning to action. "I'm coming with you," she said. Adrian didn't argue, just handed her a vest. "Then gear up, because once we start, there's no walking away." She strapped on the vest, feeling the weight of it, the protection, the commitment. One job, she'd told herself. But standing in that garage, preparing to walk back into violence, she knew the truth. It was never just one job. It was never that simple. And she'd known that from the moment she switched those glasses. The warehouse sat on a forgotten stretch of waterfront where the city gave way to industrial decay. Rusted shipping containers stacked like tombstones. Cracked asphalt sprouting weeds. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. Alara crouched behind a concrete barrier 200 yards out, watching the building through night vision binoculars. Single story, corrugated metal siding, loading dock on the south side. 2 guards visible at the front entrance, another patrolling the perimeter with a flashlight. 3 outside, she murmured into her comm. Probably more inside. Adrian's voice crackled in her ear. "We go in quiet. No shooting, unless absolutely necessary. We need Cross alive and talking." "Copy." She was positioned on the east approach with Mark. Adrian and his other 2 men, Victor and James, were circling around to the loading dock. The plan was simple. Create a distraction at the front, breach through the back, extract Cross before the Kincaids realized what was happening. Simple plans had a way of falling apart. Alara checked her watch. 11:47 p.m. Thomas Kincaid had said they were moving Cross tonight, which meant they were either already too late or running out of time. "Movement at the loading dock," Victor's voice came through. "Van just pulled up. 2 men getting out." Alara swung the binoculars toward the dock. A white cargo van, no markings. The driver and passenger both wore dark clothing and moved with purpose. "That's our window," Adrian said. "They're here to transport him. We hit now before they load him up." Mark tapped Alara's shoulder and gestured toward the front entrance. She nodded. They moved low and fast across open ground, using abandoned equipment as cover. The guard at the entrance was smoking, his rifle slung over his shoulder, attention on his phone. Sloppy. Alara waited until Mark was in position on the opposite side. Then she picked up a piece of metal debris and threw it hard against a dumpster 30 feet away. The clang echoed across the lot. The guard's head snapped up. He unslung his rifle and moved toward the sound, calling out in Russian. Mark came up behind him, silent as a ghost. One arm around the throat, the other controlling the weapon. The guard struggled for maybe 5 seconds before going limp. Mark dragged him into the shadows and zip-tied his wrists. "Front clear," he whispered. They moved to the entrance. Metal door, no window. Alara tried the handle. Locked. "Breaching," Adrian's voice said. 3, 2, 1. The sound of splintering wood came from the loading dock, shouting, then gunfire, short, controlled bursts. So much for quiet. Alara stepped back and kicked the door hard right next to the lock. It held. She kicked again. The frame cracked. Third kick, and it gave way, swinging inward. The interior was dim, lit by overhead fixtures that cast everything in yellow. Rows of metal shelving filled with legitimate inventory, Linens, toiletries, cleaning supplies. The warehouse actually was used for hotel storage, just not exclusively. More gunfire from the loading dock. Closer now. Alara moved through the shelving with Mark right behind her, their weapons up, clearing corners. The warehouse opened into a larger space in the back. She could see the loading dock door hanging off its hinges. Adrian and Victor were taking cover behind a forklift while two guards returned fire from behind stacked pallets. James was down, not moving. Alara's training kicked in. She flanked right, using the shelving as cover, getting an angle on the guards. Mark went left. They moved in sync without needing to communicate, years of similar training creating an unspoken language. She reached a position 20 feet from the nearest guard. He was focused on Adrian, didn't see her coming. She put 2 rounds in his center mass. He dropped. The second guard spun toward her. Mark took him from the other side. Double tap. Professional. Silence fell over the warehouse, broken only by the ringing in Alara's ears. Adrian emerged from cover, moving to James, checked for a pulse, shook his head. Victor swore in Russian. "How many more?" Adrian asked, his voice tight. "Unknown," Alara said. She was already moving deeper into the warehouse, toward a section that looked different from the rest. Newer. A prefabricated office structure built against the back wall, complete with windows and a door. That's where they'd keep him. She approached the door carefully, listened, heard nothing. Adrian joined her, leaving Victor to watch the loading dock. "You ready?" "Yeah." He tried the door, unlocked. That felt wrong. They went in fast, weapons leading. The office was empty. Desk, chair, filing cabinet, coffee maker still warm. "Clear!" Mark called from the adjoining room. Alara stepped through. Another empty office. Then a hallway leading to 3 doors. All closed. The first door opened to a bathroom. The second to a storage closet. The third was locked. "Here," Adrian said. Mark produced a small toolkit and went to work on the lock. It clicked open in under 30 seconds. The room beyond was dark. Alara hit the light switch. Daniel Cross sat in a metal chair in the center of the room, hands zip-tied behind his back. Blood dried on his face. He looked up at them with eyes that held no fear, just calculation. "Adrian Voss," he said. His voice was steady despite the obvious beating he'd taken. "I was wondering when you'd show up." "Where are the Kincaids?" Adrian demanded. "Gone. They cleared out an hour ago when they heard you weren't actually dying in a hospital bed." Cross smiled, showing bloodied teeth. "They knew you'd come here. This whole thing is a setup." The words hit like ice water. Alara spun toward the hallway. "We need to leave. Now." Too late. The explosion came from the front of the warehouse. Not close enough to kill them, but close enough to shake the building and send debris raining down. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness broken only by emergency strips along the floor. "Back door!" Adrian shouted. They ran, hauling Cross to his feet. Alara led, Mark behind, Adrian and Victor dragging Cross between them. The warehouse was filling with smoke, alarms screaming. They reached the loading dock. The white van was gone. In its place sat a black SUV with tinted windows. The doors opened. 4 men stepped out with automatic weapons. Alara dove behind a concrete pillar as gunfire erupted. Mark went down hard, clutching his leg. Victor returned fire, forcing the shooters to take cover. This was wrong. All of it. They'd walked straight into a trap because she'd been so sure, so confident in the intelligence she'd gathered. Amateur mistake. Adrian was pinned down with Cross, unable to advance or retreat. Victor was running low on ammunition. She could tell by the way he was conserving shots. Alara assessed the situation in 3 seconds. 4 shooters, professional spacing, good cover. Her team was 2 down, low on ammo, and stuck in a kill zone. She made a decision. Standing from cover, she emptied her magazine at the SUV's tires and engine block. The shooters scattered. In that moment of chaos, she ran forward, grabbed a flashbang from Victor's belt, and threw it at the vehicle. The blast lit up the loading dock like daylight. Alara didn't wait for the disorientation to clear. She vaulted over the concrete barrier and came up behind the nearest shooter. Took his weapon, used it to drive him back toward his companions. The others were recovering, bringing their weapons up. "Back inside," she yelled at Adrian. He didn't argue, just dragged Cross back through the loading dock entrance. Victor followed, half carrying Mark. Alara laid down covering fire and fell back. The shooters advanced but cautiously now, having lost their numerical advantage. Inside, Adrian was already moving toward the front entrance. "Can you walk?" he asked Mark. "I can limp." They made it to the front door. The street beyond was chaos, fire trucks arriving, police cordoning off the area, civilians recording on phones. Perfect cover. They emerged onto the street, just another group of people fleeing a burning building. Adrian had cut Cross's zip ties and was keeping a gun pressed against his ribs under a jacket. To anyone watching, they looked like victims helping each other escape. They reached Adrian's vehicle 3 blocks away, piled in. Adrian drove. Nobody spoke for 5 minutes. Then Cross started laughing. "Something funny?" Adrian's voice was dangerous. "You have no idea what you just walked into," Cross said. "This isn't about killing you anymore. This is about exposing you. That warehouse fire? It's going to be investigated. They're going to find James's body, find evidence of a firefight, and then they're going to start asking questions about who Adrian Voss really is and what he was doing there." Ilara's stomach sank. He was right. They just created a crime scene that would draw federal attention, the kind of attention that could unravel Adrian's entire operation. "The Kincaids played you," Cross continued. "They knew you'd come for me, knew you'd bring a team. They set up that warehouse as a trap, but not to kill you, to force you into a situation where you'd have to expose yourself." "Shut up," Victor said from the back seat, but Cross kept going. "They've got video of you breaking in, audio recordings of the gunfight, evidence that places you at a crime scene. By morning, the cops will have warrants. Your legitimate businesses will be raided, your accounts frozen, everything you've built will collapse." Adrian pulled into an underground parking garage, killed the engine, turned to face Cross. "Then I guess I have nothing to lose." He pulled out his gun and pressed it against Cross's forehead. "Wait," Ilara said. Everyone looked at her. "Killing him doesn't fix this. The Kincaids already have what they need, but Cross has something we need." "What?" Adrian asked. "Proof that the Kincaids ordered the hit. Phone records, messages, payment trails, whatever documentation exists that ties them to the assassination attempt." She looked at Cross. "You're too smart to have done this without a backup plan. You've got insurance somewhere, something that protects you if the Kincaids decide to cut you loose." Cross's expression shifted. "Even if I did, why would I give it to you?" "Because right now you're a loose end. The Kincaids left you in that warehouse to take the fall. They were moving you tonight not to protect you, but to put you somewhere permanent, somewhere you couldn't talk." Ilara leaned forward. "But if you help us prove they ordered the hit, you become valuable. A witness. Someone worth protecting instead of killing." Cross was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "There's a safety deposit box. Bank of Pacific, downtown branch. Box number 247. Keys hidden in my apartment, inside a hollowed-out book on the second shelf." "What's in the box?" Adrian asked. "Everything. Contracts, wire transfers, recordings of meetings with Thomas Kincaid. He wanted documentation of the operation in case something went wrong. So did I. We just had different ideas about who the documentation would protect." Adrian lowered his gun. "Victor, take Mark to the safe house. Get him medical attention. Don't use any of our regular doctors." "What about James?" Victor asked quietly. "I'll handle it. You just worry about keeping Mark alive." Victor nodded and helped Mark out of the vehicle. They disappeared into the shadows of the parking garage. Adrian turned to Cross. "If you're lying, I'm not. Check the apartment. Get the key. You'll see." "We will." Adrian looked at Ilara. "You up for another break-in tonight?" She was exhausted. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline come-down. Mark was shot, James was dead, and they were about to commit another felony. But she nodded. "Let's go." Cross's apartment was in a mid-rise in the business district. Security wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. Ilara picked the lock on the lobby door while Adrian kept Cross under control. They took the stairs to the 4th floor. The apartment was exactly what she expected. Expensive furniture, minimalist decor, everything chosen to project success. "Second shelf," Cross said. Ilara found the book. "Crime and Punishment?" "Appropriate." The pages had been hollowed out. Inside was a small brass key. "Got it? Now what?" Cross asked. Now you wait here while we verify your story, Adrian said. He zip-tied Cross to a radiator. If you're telling the truth, we'll be back. If you're lying, you'll starve before anyone finds you. They left him there. The drive to the Bank of Pacific took 20 minutes through empty streets. Dawn was coming, the sky turning gray at the edges. Alara felt the weight of the night pressing down on her. Every decision, every action, every consequence. The bank wouldn't open for hours, but Adrian made a call. 10 minutes later, a nervous-looking manager met them at a side entrance. Mr. Voss, this is highly irregular. I'm aware. Open it. They followed the manager to the vault. He used his key and a code to access the safety deposit boxes. Box 247 was near the bottom. Adrian used Cross's key to open it. Inside was a thick manila envelope. Adrian pulled it out and opened it right there in the vault. Documents spilled across a table. Alara started sorting through them. Wire transfers from Kincaid-controlled accounts to Cross's offshore holdings. $200,000 paid in installments over 3 months. Contracts outlining the job. Eliminate Adrian Voss, make it look natural, minimize collateral damage. And recordings. 3 of them, labeled with dates. Adrian played the first one. Thomas Kincaid's voice filled the vault, clear, unmistakable. The hit needs to happen in public, somewhere he feels safe. Use poison. Cyanide works fast. Make sure it's in something he'll definitely consume. Cross's voice responded. What about witnesses? Witnesses don't matter if it looks like natural causes. Heart attack. Allergic reaction. Something explainable. The autopsy will show poison, but by then we'll have created enough confusion about who had access that the investigation will stall. The recording continued for 3 more minutes. Detailed planning, contingencies, exit strategies. Everything they needed. Alara looked at Adrian. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes were alive with cold fury. This is it, she said quietly. This is enough to move against them. It's enough to bury them. Adrian gathered the documents carefully, putting them back in the envelope. Thomas Kincaid just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder. With this, I can go to the families, show them proof, get authorization for retaliation. What about the warehouse, the crime scene? Doesn't matter now. The Kincaids wanted to expose me, but I can expose them first. Show the families that they tried to assassinate me, that the warehouse was justified self-defense when I went after the man they hired to kill me. He smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. They set a trap, but the bait had teeth. They drove back to Cross's apartment. The sun was rising now, painting the city in shades of gold and amber. Alara watched it through the window, feeling disconnected from her own body. She'd been awake for 26 hours, had infiltrated a hotel, survived a firefight, and helped gather evidence that would probably start a gang war. Just another Tuesday. Cross was still zip-tied to the radiator when they returned. Did you find it? He asked. We did. Adrian held up the envelope. This is good work, thorough. I'm a professional. You're a survivor. There's a difference. Adrian cut the zip tie. Here's what happens next. You're going to testify against the Kincaids, not to the police, to the families. You're going to tell them everything. Who hired you, what they paid you, what the plan was. And in exchange, I'll make sure you walk away from this alive. And if I refuse, then I'll make sure you don't walk away at all. Cross rubbed his wrist where the zip tie had left marks. Not much of a choice. It's the only choice you've got. When? Tonight. I'm calling a meeting, neutral ground. The families will want to hear this directly from you. Adrian turned to Alara. You should be there too, as a witness to what happened at the restaurant. Alara shook her head. I'm not testifying to a room full of criminals about how I stopped an assassination. That's not the deal we made. The deal was you help me find Cross and prove the Kincaids ordered the hit. You've done that. But this last part, presenting the evidence, I need you there. You're the only person who can confirm the sequence of events. The glass, the switch. Kostya's death. Find someone else. There is no one else. Everyone at that table worked for me. Their testimony is biased. But you're an outsider, a civilian who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Your account carries weight. Alara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to take his meeting and his gang politics and leave her out of it. But she'd made a deal. And despite everything, despite the danger and the exhaustion and the bodies piling up, she kept her word. "One testimony," she said, "and then we're done. You pay Kostya's family what you promised. You leave me and Iris alone, and you never contact me again." "Agreed." They shook hands. Adrian took Cross to a safe location. Alara went home, showered, changed into clean clothes, tried to eat but couldn't stomach food. At 4 p.m., Mark picked her up. His leg was bandaged, but he was walking. They drove to a restaurant on the waterfront, upscale, private, the kind of place where deals were made over whiskey and handshakes. Adrian was already there, sitting at a large table in a private room. 5 other men sat with him. Alara recognized 2 from Adrian's files, representatives from the other major families in the city, old men with hard eyes and expensive suits. Cross sat at the far end of the table, looking remarkably calm for someone about to betray his employers. "Gentlemen," Adrian said as Alara entered, "this is Alara Vance. She's the witness I mentioned." The men looked at her with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. "Miss Vance," one of them said, Italian accent, silver hair. "We appreciate you coming. Please, sit." Alara sat, felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. Adrian played the recordings, passed around the documents, explained the plan, the execution, the failure. Cross corroborated every detail, his voice steady and professional. When they were done, one of the old men, the one with the Italian accent, leaned back in his chair. "This is damning evidence," he said, "if proven authentic." "It's authentic," Cross said. "I made those recordings myself. The wire transfers can be verified through international banking records." "And you, Miss Vance, tell us what you saw." Alara took a breath, told them about the glass, the placement, the switch, Kostya's death. She kept it factual, unemotional, just the events. When she finished, the room was silent. Then the Italian man nodded. "The Kincaids have overstepped. Assassination at a public restaurant. Sloppy, disrespectful." He looked at Adrian. "You have the right to retaliate. The families will not interfere." The other men murmured agreement. Adrian stood. "Thank you. I'll handle this cleanly. No innocence, no public exposure." "See that you do." The meeting ended. The old men left one by one, until only Adrian, Cross, and Alara remained. "What happens to him?" Alara asked, nodding at Cross. "He disappears. New identity, new city. The families agreed. He cooperated, so he lives." Cross looked at Alara. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your friend, Kostya. He wasn't supposed to die. He wasn't my friend, but he had a family, and they lost him because of your choices." "I know." Cross stood and walked to the door, paused. "You're good at this. The infiltration, the tactics. You should consider coming back to it. People with your skills don't stay retired for long. Watch me." He left. Adrian poured 2 glasses of whiskey, slid one across the table to Alara. "To Kostya," he said. They drank. "What happens now?" Alara asked. "Now? I move against the Kincaids. Thomas will be dead within a week. The family will fracture, and the territories they controlled will be redistributed." He set down his glass. "It'll be messy, but necessary." "And me? You're free. Our deal is complete. Kostya's family will be taken care of, and your name stays out of all of this." Alara stood, extended her hand. "Then this is goodbye." Adrian shook it, held on a moment longer than necessary. "If you change your mind, I won't." She walked out of the restaurant into the evening air. The sun was setting, turning the water gold and red. Mark was waiting by the car. "Need a ride?" he asked. "I'll walk, thanks." She headed down the waterfront, hands in her pockets, mind already trying to process everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. She'd saved a life, taken lives, brought down a criminal conspiracy, and walked away from it all, again. The thing about violence was it never really left you. You could bury it, ignore it, pretend it didn't exist, but it was always there, waiting for the moment when the world demanded it back. Alara had given it back, had stepped into that role one more time, and now she was stepping out, for good this time. Probably. She reached her apartment as full dark settled over the city. unlocked the door, stepped inside. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but habit won out. Hello? Miss Vance? Adrian's voice. One more thing I forgot to mention. What? Kostya's funeral is tomorrow, 10 a.m. His wife asked if you'd be there. She wants to thank you. Alara closed her eyes. She shouldn't thank me. Maybe not, but she wants to. You gave her the truth about how her husband died, that he saved my life. That's worth something. The line went dead. Alara sat on her bed and stared at the wall. Tomorrow she'd go to a funeral for a man she'd gotten killed while trying to save someone else. She'd face his widow, his daughters, tell them lies about honor and sacrifice. And then maybe, finally, she could close this chapter and move on. The night stretched ahead, empty, quiet. Alara didn't sleep, just sat there in the dark thinking about glasses and choices and the thin line between saving lives and ending them. The funeral home smelled like lilies and furniture polish. Alara stood in the parking lot for 10 minutes before she could make herself go inside. Black dress borrowed from a neighbor she barely knew. Hair pulled back. Hands that wouldn't stop shaking no matter how many times she told herself this was just another performance. But it wasn't. She walked through the doors into a lobby full of people she didn't know. Men in dark suits with faces carved from granite. Women dabbing at tears with tissues. Children too young to understand permanence, fidgeting in their dress clothes. Kostya's family. A receiving line had formed near the entrance to the main chapel. At the front stood a woman in her early 40s, dark hair streaked with gray, eyes red from crying. 3 girls clustered around her, teenagers, each one carrying the same sharp features as their father. Alara's throat tightened. She almost turned around, almost walked right back out. But Mark appeared at her elbow, materializing from the crowd like a ghost. Mrs. Volkov wants to meet you, he said quietly. It's important to her. I don't belong here. You're the reason she knows the truth. That counts for something. He guided her toward the receiving line. Other mourners parted, recognizing Mark, understanding that Alara was under Adrian's protection, even if they didn't know why. When they reached the front, Mrs. Volkov looked up. Her eyes were the same color as Kostya's had been, gray-blue, like winter sky. You're Alara, she said. Not a question. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Volkov took both of Alara's hands in hers. Her grip was strong, certain. Thank you for coming. Adrian told me what you did, that you tried to save him. Alara wanted to correct her, to explain that she hadn't tried to save Kostya. She'd tried to save Adrian. That Kostya had died because of her choices, not in spite of them. But Mrs. Volkov was looking at her like she was owed gratitude, like her husband's death meant something because Alara had been there. I'm sorry for your loss, Alara managed. He died protecting someone he cared about. That's how he would have wanted to go. Mrs. Volkov's voice cracked slightly. He always said the worst death would be meaningless, random. At least this way it mattered. The oldest daughter, maybe 17, stepped forward. Did he suffer? The question hit like a punch. Alara remembered Kostya convulsing on the restaurant floor, the way his body had seized, the awful stillness that followed. It was fast, she said. It was the kindest truth she had. The girl nodded, satisfied with the lie. Mrs. Volkov released Alara's hands. Will you stay for the service? Of course. The chapel was full. Alara sat near the back, watching as person after person stood to speak about Kostya, his loyalty, his humor, the way he'd helped a friend move apartments in the rain, how he'd taught his daughters to fish, stories that painted him as human instead of muscle for a crime boss. Maybe he'd been both. People usually were. Adrian spoke last. His eulogy was short, carefully worded. Nothing that would implicate anyone in anything. Just a tribute to a friend lost too soon. When it was over, the mourners filed out to a cemetery on the edge of the city. The burial was quick, efficient, dirt hitting the casket with hollow thuds. Mrs. Volkov standing straight-backed between her daughters, refusing to collapse, even though Alara could see the effort it took. Afterward, people gathered at a restaurant nearby. Food appeared, platters of cold cuts, pasta salads, things brought by neighbors and friends. Alara found herself in a corner with a plate she wasn't eating, watching the crowd. Adrian approached, carrying 2 glasses of vodka. He handed her one. "Traditional toast," he said, "for the dead." They drank. The vodka burned going down. "His family seems strong," Ilara said. "They are. Stronger than he probably gave them credit for." Adrian watched Mrs. Volkov across the room, surrounded by relatives. "She already knows about the pension, the college funds. I made sure the paperwork was filed before the funeral." "That's good. It's the least I can do." He turned to face her. "I'm handling the Kincaid situation tonight. Thomas and 2 of his key lieutenants, clean, quiet. The families have signed off." Ilara set down her glass. "I don't need to know the details. I'm not asking you to be involved, just letting you know it's happening. So when you see the news tomorrow, you won't be surprised. And after that, things go back to normal. The territories get redistributed, new alliances form, the city keeps turning." He paused. "And you disappear again, like we agreed. That's the plan." "Plans change." Ilara looked at him sharply. "Our deal doesn't." "I know. I'm just saying you're good at this. Better than good. And I could use someone with your instincts. You have Mark, Victor, plenty of others. I have soldiers. I need someone who thinks differently, who sees patterns others miss." Adrian's voice dropped. "Someone who switches glasses instead of just shooting the problem. Find someone else." "There is no one else like you." The words hung between them. Not quite a compliment, not quite a threat, just a statement of fact. Ilara picked up her glass and finished the vodka. "I came to this city to be invisible, to live a life where the biggest crisis is running out of coffee filters. That's what I want. That's what I'm going back to." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone running from what they're good at, and that kind of running never ends well." She met his eyes. "I ran from violence, from making decisions that get people killed, from becoming the kind of person who thinks murder is just another business transaction." Her voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. "You live in that world because you chose it. I didn't. I got pulled in, did my time, and got out. What happened this week doesn't change that. It changes everything. You can't unknow what you know, can't unfeel what you felt when you were back in action. I saw it in you at the warehouse, the clarity, the certainty. That's not something you can just turn off. Watch me." Adrian was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. "Fair enough, but my offer stands. If you change your mind, I won't." People say that a lot, right up until they do. He walked away, leaving Ilara alone in the corner with an empty glass and a head full of arguments she didn't want to have with herself. Because he was right about one thing. She had felt it, that cold clarity when violence became necessary. The way her mind sharpened, her body moved, her instincts took over. It was the thing she'd been running from, and also the thing she was best at. That didn't mean she had to choose it. She left the restaurant without saying goodbye, took the bus home through afternoon traffic, changed out of the funeral dress and into jeans and a sweater, made coffee she didn't drink. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, silent. No messages, no calls. The world moving on without her. Tomorrow the news would report something about Thomas Kincaid. An accident, a robbery gone wrong. Whatever story Adrian's people crafted to explain a body. And the day after that, she'd go back to Luminaire, put on her uniform, serve tables, disappear back into the background of other people's lives. That was the plan. Ilara sat at her kitchen table and tried to believe it. Sleep came fitfully. Dreams of wine glasses and convulsing bodies, and Kostya's daughters asking questions she couldn't answer honestly. She woke at 4 a.m. and didn't bother trying to go back to sleep. Instead, she opened her laptop and did something she'd been avoiding. She looked up Sentinel Group. The company website was slick, professional, corporate security consulting, risk assessment, crisis management. Nothing that screamed we handle problems that make governments nervous. But Ilara knew the truth. Sentinel operated in the gaps between legal and necessary. They took jobs that law enforcement couldn't touch, and military contractors wouldn't admit existed. And they were very, very good at making problems disappear. She found Iris's name in the leadership section, director of operations. Same severe haircut in the photo, same expression that said she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. Ilara's finger hovered over the contact button. She could call, could ask if there were any openings, could step back into that world officially instead of accidentally. She closed the laptop. At 7 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Miss Vance, this is Claire Kincaid. Alara went very still. Claire. Thomas Kincaid's daughter. The one who ran the legitimate businesses. How did you get this number? Same way I get everything, money and patience. Claire's voice was cultured, educated, nothing like her father's rough edges. I'd like to meet with you, this morning, if possible. Why would I agree to that? Because my father died last night, and I think we both know who's responsible. The line was quiet for 3 heartbeats. I had nothing to do with that, Alara said carefully. I know, but you had everything to do with what led to it. The failed assassination, the testimony, the evidence that gave Adrian Voss permission to retaliate. Claire's tone didn't change, but something cold moved underneath it. I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling to offer you a choice. I'm not interested in, just hear me out, one meeting, neutral ground. I'll come alone. You can bring whoever you want, 30 minutes of your time. That's all I'm asking. Alara should have hung up, should have blocked the number and called Adrian to warn him that the Kincaids weren't done. Instead, she said, Where? They met at a coffee shop in a busy commercial district. Lots of witnesses, lots of exits. Claire sat at a corner table, looking perfectly composed in a charcoal blazer and pearl earrings. Late 30s, blonde, the kind of woman who ran boardrooms and charity galas with equal efficiency. Alara sat across from her. She'd texted Mark the location before coming, just in case. He was probably watching from a car outside. Thank you for coming, Claire said. You have 29 minutes left. Claire smiled slightly. Direct. I appreciate that. So I'll be direct too. My father tried to kill Adrian Voss. It failed. Adrian retaliated by killing my father and 2 of our senior people. By the rules of the world we operate in, that should be the end of it. The debt is paid. So why are we here? Because I'm not my father. I don't want to run a criminal empire. I want to legitimize our businesses. Turn the Kincaid name into something that doesn't make people check for exits when they hear it. She leaned forward slightly. But I can't do that if Adrian Voss decides to dismantle everything my family built. That's not my problem. It is if you want to stay invisible. Right now, Adrian trusts you, respects you. That gives you influence. I'm asking you to use it. Alara laughed without humor. You want me to convince Adrian to leave your family alone after they tried to kill him? I want you to convince him that I'm different from my father, that I'm willing to make concessions, to withdraw from contested territories, to operate within boundaries that don't threaten his interests. Claire pulled out a document and slid it across the table. This is a proposal. Territory redistribution, financial compensation for damages, a 5-year non-aggression pact, everything Adrian would need to feel secure. Alara didn't touch the document. Why would he believe any of this? Your father made deals too. Look how that turned out. Because unlike my father, I'm not interested in expansion. I'm interested in survival. The criminal side of our business is dying. It's been dying for years. My father just refused to see it, but I do. And I know the only way forward is to transition into legitimacy while we still have capital to invest. Again, not my problem. It will be when Adrian starts a war to eliminate every Kincaid with a pulse. Wars create chaos. Chaos creates casualties, and you've already got enough blood on your conscience. Claire's eyes were steady. I've done my research on you, Miss Vance. I know about Sentinel Group. I know about the jobs you walked away from. I know you left because you were tired of collateral damage. You don't know anything about me. I know you switched a glass to save a stranger's life. I know you infiltrated my family's headquarters to gather evidence. I know you testified against my father, even though it put a target on your back. Claire's voice softened slightly. Those aren't the actions of someone who doesn't care. They're the actions of someone trying to do the right thing in a world where right and wrong aren't always clear. Alara stood. I'm not a mediator. I'm not a peacemaker. I'm just someone who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe. Or maybe you're someone who makes the wrong places better just by being there. Claire stood as well. Take the proposal. Read it. If you decide to present it to Adrian, fine. If not, I'll find another way. But I wanted you to know that not everyone in my family wants more blood. She walked out, leaving the document on the table. Alara stared at it for a long moment. Then she picked it up and left. That evening, she sat in her apartment with the proposal spread across her bed. It was thorough, detailed, legally sound. Everything it promised would genuinely reduce tension between the Voss and Kincaid organizations. It might actually work. Her phone buzzed. Text from Adrian. Heard you met with Claire Kincaid. Want to tell me what that was about? Of course he knew. He probably had someone watching her. She called him instead of texting back. She gave me a proposal, Alara said when he answered. Territory concessions and a non-aggression pact. And you're telling me this because? Because I don't want another war. I don't want more funerals. And despite everything, I think she's sincere. Adrian was quiet for a moment. You're defending a Kincaid. I'm defending common sense. You eliminated Thomas. You made your point. Pushing further just creates more chaos. Or it eliminates future threats. Or it starts a cycle that doesn't end until everyone's dead. Alara took a breath. I'm not asking you to trust her. I'm asking you to read the proposal and decide if it serves your interests. That's all. Send it to me. She photographed each page and texted them over. 10 minutes later, her phone rang again. This is actually reasonable, Adrian said. He sounded surprised. Claire's not her father. Maybe, or maybe she's better at playing the long game. A pause. But you're right. Continuing the war costs more than it gains. I'll agree to a meeting, neutral ground, no weapons, just negotiation. You're sure? No, but I'm willing to see where it goes. That's more than I would have offered yesterday. His voice shifted. You did good work here, Alara. Broker an actual peace? That's worth something. I didn't broker anything. I just passed along a message. That's how peace starts. Someone willing to pass the message. They hung up. Alara lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. In the span of a week, she'd stopped an assassination, helped dismantle a conspiracy, survived a firefight, and potentially prevented a gang war. And somehow, she was still trying to convince herself she was just a waitress. The meeting between Adrian and Claire happened 3 days later at the same coffee shop. Alara wasn't invited, but Mark told her it went well. Agreements were made, boundaries established. The city's underworld settled into a new equilibrium. Kostya's family received their pension. James's family received similar compensation. The warehouse fire was ruled an industrial accident. Daniel Cross disappeared into witness protection under a new name. And Alara went back to work at Luminaire. 2 weeks after the funeral, she was serving a table of businessmen when she noticed someone watching her from across the dining room. Adrian. He was alone, sitting at a small two-top near the window, dressed casually for once. Jeans and a sweater instead of a suit. When she met his eyes, he gestured to the empty chair across from him. She finished with the businessmen, then walked over. You're not in my section, she said. I requested you specifically. That's not how this works. Humor me. She sat, against her better judgment. How have you been? Adrian asked. Busy, rent's due, tips are good. Sounds thrilling. It's quiet. I like quiet. Do you? He leaned back. Because I've been thinking about what you said, about running from what you're good at. And I realized something. You're not running from violence. You're running from the decision-making, from the weight of choosing who lives and who dies. Alara didn't respond. But here's the thing, Adrian continued. You're going to make those decisions whether you want to or not. Because that's who you are. You see danger and you act. You can't unknow what you know, can't unsee what you see. So you can either make those decisions while trying to pretend you're not, or you can accept what you are and use it purposefully. Is this the part where you offer me a job again? No, this is the part where I buy you coffee and tell you that whatever you decide, you've got an ally in this city. Someone who knows what you're capable of. Someone who won't forget what you did. I don't want to be remembered. Too late for that. A waiter approached. Adrian ordered coffee. Black? No sugar. Alara ordered the same. When the waiter left, Adrian pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. It had a phone number on it. Nothing else. That's a direct line, he said. Not to me. To a bank account in your name. $200,000. Your fee for the work you did. Plus interest. I don't want your money. It's not mine. It's yours. You earned it. He stood. Use it or don't. Invest it. Give it away. I don't care. But it's there if you need it. He left before she could argue. Alara picked up the card, turned it over in her fingers. $200,000. Enough to disappear properly. Move to another city, start completely fresh. Or enough to build something, to stop running. She pocketed the card and went back to work. That night, she called Iris. "Twice in 1 month," Iris said by way of greeting. "Should I be worried?" "I have a question." "Shoot." "Are you happy?" Iris was quiet for a moment. "That's a complicated question." "I know. I'm satisfied. I'm good at what I do. I make a difference, even if most people will never know it. That's enough for me." A pause. "Why are you asking?" "Because I'm trying to figure out if walking away was the right choice." "And?" "I don't know. I thought it was. For 5 years I was sure, but now you've tasted it again, and you remember why you were good at it." "Yeah. So what are you going to do?" Alara looked around her apartment, the cheap furniture, the blank walls, the life she'd built out of deliberate emptiness. "I think I'm going to stop running," she said quietly. "From what?" "From myself." She heard Iris's smile through the phone. "About damn time. When do you want to start?" "Start what?" "Working again. 3 contract positions open. All civilian consulting, no wet work, just risk assessment and security planning. Good money. Better hours than waitressing." "I don't know if I'm ready." "Nobody's ever ready. But you're capable. That's what matters." Alara closed her eyes, made a decision. "Send me the details." "Already done. Check your email." They hung up. Alara opened her laptop and found 3 job listings in her inbox, all exactly what Iris had described. Legitimate work using skills she'd spent 5 years trying to bury. She read through them carefully, made notes, started drafting a response. For the first time in a long time, she felt something shift. Not quite peace, not quite certainty, but something like direction. The next morning, she gave her notice at Luminaire. 2 weeks. Professional. The manager seemed sorry to lose her, but not surprised. "You seemed like you were just passing through," he said. "I was, but not anymore." She spent those 2 weeks training her replacement and saying goodbye to the few coworkers she'd actually talked to. Mrs. Kim at the coffee shop gave her a free pastry on her last day. The neighbor who'd loaned her the funeral dress wished her luck. Small kindnesses from a life she was leaving behind. On her final night, Mark picked her up from the apartment. She'd packed everything that mattered into 2 suitcases and a backpack. The rest she donated. "Where to?" Mark asked. "Iris's office. I'm starting tomorrow." "Adrian will be glad to hear that." "Adrian doesn't get a vote." Mark smiled. "Fair enough." They drove across the city as sunset painted everything in shades of amber and rose. Alara watched the streets scroll past, the restaurant district, the waterfront, the warehouse where she'd nearly died. A city full of ghosts and possibilities. "Can I ask you something?" Mark said. "Sure." "Do you regret it, switching the glasses?" Alara thought about Kostya's daughters, about Mrs. Volkov's gratitude, about Adrian's survival and the peace that followed. "I regret that someone had to die," she said, "but I don't regret trying to save a life, even if everything that came after was messy and complicated and harder than I expected." That's the thing about doing the right thing. It's never clean. No, it's not. They pulled up to Sentinel Group's office building. Glass and steel, unremarkable from the outside. But inside was where the real work happened, where problems got solved and crises got managed and the world kept turning because people like Iris made sure it did. Alara got out of the car with her bags. "Thanks for the ride." "Anytime." Mark hesitated. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice, coming back." "We'll see." She walked into the building and didn't look back. Iris met her in the lobby, looking exactly the same except for maybe a few more gray hairs. "Welcome back," Iris said. "I'm not back. I'm just working." "Whatever helps you sleep at night." Iris gestured toward the elevators. "Come on, I'll show you your office." They rode up in comfortable silence. The office Iris showed her was small but had a window, desk, computer, coffee maker, everything she needed. "You start tomorrow," Iris said. "Risk assessment for a tech company worried about industrial espionage. Boring but profitable." Sounds perfect. It won't always be boring. Eventually, you'll get the messy cases, the ones that need your specific skill set. I know. And when that happens, when you're faced with another impossible choice in 3 seconds, you'll make the call. Because that's what you do. Alara set down her bags and looked out the window at the city below. Millions of people living their lives, making their own choices. Some good, some bad, most somewhere in between. I spent 5 years thinking I could outrun this, she said quietly. That if I made myself small enough, invisible enough, the world would stop asking me to make those calls. But it doesn't work that way. No, it doesn't. Because the calls find you anyway. And when they do, you either act or you live with what happens when you don't. She turned to face Iris. So I'm done running. I'm done pretending I'm something I'm not. What are you then? Alara thought about wine glasses and switched fates and the weight of every choice that followed. I'm someone who sees danger and acts, who makes impossible decisions in seconds and lives with the consequences, who can't walk away from violence when it finds me, so I might as well walk toward it on my own terms. That's a hell of an origin story. It's not an origin, it's an acceptance. Iris nodded. Good enough. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start fresh. She left Alara alone in the office. Alara stood there for a while, watching the sunset fade into night, the city lighting up below, bright and chaotic and beautiful. Somewhere out there, Adrian was consolidating his power. Claire was legitimizing her family's businesses. Kostya's daughters were learning to live without their father. Daniel Cross was building a new life under a new name. And Alara Vance was finally accepting that she couldn't be invisible, couldn't be small, couldn't pretend that a single moment in a restaurant hadn't changed everything. She'd switched a glass and altered fate. The ripples from that choice would keep spreading for years. Some good, some bad, most complicated. But she was done apologizing for it, done hiding from it. She pulled out her phone and texted Adrian. Thanks for the coffee. His response came immediately. Anytime. And Alara? Welcome back. She smiled despite herself, pocketed the phone. In the morning, she'd start work, start building a new life that acknowledged who she really was instead of who she wished she could be. But tonight, she stood in her office and let herself feel something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Not peace, not certainty, but purpose. And that was enough. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, Alara Vance finally stopped running. The glass had been switched. The choice had been made. And everything that followed, the violence, the consequences, the impossible decisions, was just the price of being someone who couldn't look away when danger arrived. She'd pay that price. Not because she wanted to, but because it was who she was. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. The night settled over the city like a blanket. Alara turned off the office light and headed home. Not to an empty apartment meant for hiding, but to a place she'd build deliberately, with purpose, with the knowledge that she'd been running from herself for too long. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices, new moments where she'd have 3 seconds to decide who lived and who didn't. But tonight, for the first time in 5 years, Alara Vance was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, and that was worth more than all the invisibility in the world.